It's a huge feel-good win story at Indianapolis as Bubba Wallace takes the checkered flag. Let's break down all the action from the Brickyard today. Welcome back to the Breaking Bob channel. Hope y'all are doing well on this Sunday night. The Sunday scaries are officially setting in as it's now post-race in the NASCAR world. We've got a lot to get into. A great feel-good story from Indianapolis. Of course, Bubba Wallace kissing the bricks right now at the Brickyard. We'll talk about all that, but if you're new here, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss a thing. NASCAR content on a daily basis here at the Breaking Bob. Of course, yesterday, another feel-good win story in the Xfinity World. Dale Jr. and Junior Motorsports getting that 100th win behind Connor Zilic. And Austin Hill, we're going to be eagerly awaiting that penalty report this week to see if he will be suspended for Iowa as far as his antics with Eric Almirola. But go check that out if you missed it. Let's talk about the Cup Series, the main event on Sunday as the Brickyard 400, one of NASCAR's crown jewels. Of course, they're back on the oval for the second straight year, and better race than last year, gotta say. Overall, it is what it is at Indy. You know that track position is key. It's going to be a fuel mileage race, but overall, I thought that today there was enough storylines that as a viewer, I was intrigued there. I'll talk about the racing and the attendance at the Brickyard here in a little bit, but let's talk about the winner, because what a story it was as Bubba Wallace takes the checkered flag at Indianapolis, breaking a 100-race win streak. Now, this is the longest win streak broken since Casey Kane had his 102-win race streak broken back in 2017. And the celebration was incredible as you got to see most of the drivers come up to Bubba Wallace either on pit lane or during the cool-down lap, giving him a tap or giving him a thumbs up out the window. You could just tell how the drivers were excited for Bubba. And then he got out of the car. You could tell how excited he was. And then the adrenaline wore off. He saw his family, he saw his wife and his child, did the whole Lion King celebration with his kid there. It was really cool as Bubba Wallace, especially now being a dad and even the last year or two, it seems like he's really settled into his role at 2311. He's comfortable in his own skin. And now with Charles Denike on the pit box as well, just seems like that's a really good combination and a great moment today for not only Bubba Wallace, for 2311 as well, as they're in the middle of a lawsuit with NASCAR. An open car just won the Brickyard 400. Now, asterisk by open car, of course, but technically that was an open car that won today. So for the men and women at airspeed as well, it's a massive win. It's a slap to NASCAR, some would say. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of different ways you can look at this win, but overall for Bubba Wallace as a driver especially, what a great moment for him to win a crown jewel race and to break a driving or winless streak there. That's a great story. And as Bubba Wallace kisses those historic bricks at Indianapolis, I gotta think he really earned that race win today. And I gotta say, when that rain delay came out with 4 laps to go, internally I was thinking, I really hope this race goes back green for a couple of reasons. Of course, last week at Dover, they got the track back and they got to run the race distance. You always want to see the race completed in full distance there. You wanted to see all 400 miles at Indianapolis. But also, for Bubba Wallace, you don't want to see him win and people use that excuse there. Of course, he won his first race at Talladega a couple years ago under a rain delay. People are going to say, oh, well, the rain came out. He wouldn't have held off Kyle Larson. He would have run out of fuel. This, that, the other. He's a polarizing figure in the sport, of course. But that being said, he held off Kyle Larson for 2 different overtime restarts and did it clearly. I mean, that inside lane was definitely the way to go. He had William Byron, Kyle Larson's teammate, behind him, which I thought that was a very interesting moment on the choose rule there. But that being said, Bubba Wallace fired off there and beat Kyle Larson head up. And Kyle Larson, of course, has as much experience as Indianapolis as anyone the last few years, of course, running the double the last years and then running the Xfinity race yesterday. But Bubba Wallace was the one that had the speed there in that final stage. It was a great moment for him and getting to do it, showing off his racing ability more than anything. I think that was what was really cool. There was no excuses that you can look to for Bubba Wallace winning today, except for he had the race speed at the end that was the difference there. I mean, he held off Kyle Larson off pure talent there. It was impressive to see. Side note, shout out to NASCAR for getting that track back. I mean, that track was very wet there for just a few minutes of rain, especially on the heels of F1 today, where they had a rain delay at Spa, and they were running around there with a couple of tractors there. NASCAR, this good old boy Southern sport that over here in America, they just go left. they got a little bit more technology than maybe the pinnacle of motorsports over there, at least when it comes to drying tracks. I thought that was really a funny little wrinkle there. But actually, back to the actual racing today in Indianapolis, because I did mention that it was a strategy day. It was when it comes down to a crown jewel race, especially at Indianapolis, I want it to be in the driver's hands, but I also want it to be a full team effort, because at a crown jewel event, it takes everyone to win these races. It takes the pit crew, it takes the crew chief with great strategy calls. And today, it took a team effort, truly, especially when you look at the multi cautions at the end. Bubba Wallace barely holding on there. You had Tyler Reddick, his teammate, pit right before that first overtime because he didn't think he had enough fuel. Started at the back, got caught up in that first overtime restart caution there. So for Bubba Wallace and Charles Denick to be able to manage the fuel there and hold on for just enough, even have enough for a burnout, it was a fuel save day, but also the tires. You look at some of the fastest cars today were Penske. Maybe it was just because they had the strategy that put themselves out to get that track position, but Austin Cindric won stage 2, blew a tire. Joey Logano was set up to be the fastest car in stage 3, was leading on that final strategy, blew a tire, that right tire. It just, for Team Penske, obviously you say what you want about the internal side of Penske this year, but snake bitten on the IndyCar side, then they come to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway that their owner Roger Penske owns, and their 2 cars blowing tires today with speed, and then Ryan Blaney runs out of fuel Ryan Blaney has to pit under caution with pit road closed because he was going to run out of fuel right during the stage break there. It can go wrong at will for Penske this year, it just seems like. Now, again, maybe that's karma, maybe that's the universe just kind of throwing it back at them. But again, they had some fast cars today. But last year it was Ryan Blaney getting beaten on the outside by Kyle Larson because Brad Keselowski had to pit real quick, or flip that. Brad Keselowski had to pit on the inside, and Kyle Larson took the inside. This year, Ryan Blaney runs out of fuel, and it just Penske blows tires. It's just frustrating all around for them, you got to think. Other incidents, we got some solo car incidents. Ross Chastain early on spun a little bit by Michael McDowell, but he lost the back end of that car into the wall, and his day was done. Eric Jones also losing a complete wheel there, and he was completely done for the day. And a frustrating day for both drivers, but their teams on opposite sides of the spectrum, as Trackhouse and Ross Chastain, didn't have speed today. I mean, SVG qualified the fastest out of the 3 cars and he was 11th. Ross Chastain taken out early. Daniel Suarez got some nose damage that we'll talk about in just a second. But look at Legacy Motor Club. Eric Jones, top 10 speed today, probably. If you really look at the actual race trim, qualified in the top 10. John Hunter Nemechek as well, very fast today, was consistently in the top 10, top 15. Legacy Motor Club had a day that maybe the results, on the finishing order may not be there. But I think when you really look back and you look at the raw speed from these cars, Legacy Motor Club really nailed it when they came to the track this weekend. And I mentioned Daniel Suarez a second ago with that nose damage. There was an incident on one of the first restarts in the first half of the race where I believe it was Josh Berry spun his tires, stacked kind of the field up, and multiple cars just kind of slammed into each other. It was, I believe, Kyle Busch, Daniel Suarez, of course. Ty Dillon was one of those involved. Those cars just all really got damaged and just kind of messed with their day-to-day, it seemed like. It was one of those restarts that it was a stack-up. It is what it is there. It's part of the race there, and it's part of the aggressive restarts in the NASCAR world now. But I mentioned Ty Dillon was one of those cars. He finished, I believe, 3 laps down. That's Ty Gibbs is your NASCAR in-season challenge bracket winner, as they had that makeshift victory lane for him under the Pagoda. It was a whole thing. They transitioned from Bubba Wallace in the front stretch to Ty Gibbs and the trophy there with NASCAR Commissioner Steve Phelps there. I guess NASCAR got what they wanted there. Hopefully next year with the bracket they can kind of twist it and amend it a little bit better how they do the maybe not Atlanta the first race there, but they did get a great story with Ty Dillon moving on to be the Cinderella story. If it had just been John Hunter Nemechek versus Ty Dillon or Ty Gibbs, would it have been as exciting? Probably not there, but at least we got to have some sort of story with some different characters that we may not necessarily focus on in the NASCAR world. So I think that was pretty cool, and hopefully It was announced this week that the money, that $1 million, is actually going to the team and not the driver. Hopefully Joe Gibbs shares with his grandson a little bit, maybe even the pit crew and the team there. Even Chris Gabehart, who isn't technically the crew chief, it's Tyler Allen, although Chris Gabehart's the one it sounds like calling the shots right now the last 2 months of the season, the way he's on that radio. Hopefully they share a little bit of money with those gentlemen, because they were the one that really had the consistent speed for that 54 team this last couple of weeks. Now let's look at some of these finishing results. Of course, Kyle Larson second, Denny Hamlin third, Ryan Preece fourth, Keselowski fifth, Todd Gilliland, the Toddfather, with a sixth place finish quietly there. Ryan Blaney did recover for seventh, Christopher Bell eighth, Alex Bowman ninth, Carson Osfar 10th, Justin Haley 11th. The Spire teammates there, impressive for them. Of course, they had some good speed the last few weeks. Building off of that, a team that you could definitely point out with a trending in the right direction there, especially with a young lineup. Pole sitter Chase Briscoe in 18th, just couldn't really get back to the front today once he lost his track position there, but right ahead of him in 17th place. Want to give a huge shout out to the Live Fast Motorsports 78 entry with Catherine Legg behind it. Of course, the start of her NASCAR career this year, earlier, she got thrown into the fire at Phoenix in the Cup Series and had some incidents. Everyone kind of was hard on her early, whether it was fair or not, whether she was set up to fail or not. You could make the argument that's not what we're here to do. I want to give a huge shout out to her and the team at Live Fast today, the 78 team, for getting a 17th place finish. The lack of experience and testing they have together, and still able to get a result like that, a top 20 finish, finishing on the lead lap, finishing inside the chaos and carnage there. Even, like I said, a spot ahead of the pole sitter Chase Briscoe today. What a massive, massive accomplishment for them, and for Catherine Legg especially, with the slander she got early on in the NASCAR season there. What a recovery story and a great bounce back. It really, I hope she gets the credit she deserves for this result. Obviously, her experience at the Indy 500 helps, and let's talk about the attendance today at Indianapolis, mind you, for a second. Of course, everyone wants to compare it to the Indy 500, the largest single-day sporting event in the world, over 300,000 attendees. So NASCAR, I think last year had 70, 80,000 roughly in attendance. It's about a fourth of the facility there. So you think of a fourth of a facility, it's going to look empty, even if you have 80,000 people there. Today, strong crowd overall. If you really look at the numbers, it's probably about 60-ish thousand, 70,000 maybe. But it's going to look empty there. And everyone's looking at the crowd on TV saying, well, look, the bleachers are completely empty. It's right in the middle of the sun where it's getting just pounded down. It's 100 degrees in those bleachers right now. I mean, if you look under the stands, packed under the stands, under the actual awnings and all of that. So, everyone's going to say, oh, they are here just to parade around, not in front of fans and all that. What's the alternative? Do you not want them to go to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway? Do you not want them to be at one of the most iconic tracks in the world? The most iconic track probably in America, no less. NASCAR needs to be at this venue for various reasons. I could do a whole video on this, but for people saying the attendance today and all, it is what it is. It's a hot day out there, 70,000 people. That's still double what Darlington is, roughly. I mean, that's maybe not double, but it's the same argument with Bristol, where, half of Bristol being full, even if that's 70,000 people. You look at North Wilkesboro, 25,000 people, 30,000 people maybe, roughly. It looks packed there, but it's still a third of that crowd. I hate seeing the fans just always finding something to be negative about. I know it's NASCAR. What's new? Get used to it, but just accept Indianapolis on the schedule. It is what it is. And even the people that were clamoring for the Indy Roval back, come on now. Come on. You were the ones that were saying we didn't want road course racing a couple weeks ago. Now you're wanting the Indy Roval back. Make up your minds, people. I think that this was a fine race overall, strategy-wise, and again, it is what it is. This is a crown jewel event in the NASCAR schedule. Let's just treat it as it is. Maybe the racing won't be 10 out of 10. It may not be Kansas, but it has a place on the schedule, and especially with the history of the venue, it's a perfect mix, really, when you consider it, and NASCAR needs to be there. And before we put a bow on Indianapolis and wrap this video up, let's look at the playoffs, leaving Indianapolis, heading to Iowa with 4 races left in the NASCAR regular season. Of course, Bubba Wallace locking himself in. It's 1 less spot, 3 spots technically open with 4 races left. Tyler Reddick still pretty comfortable right now, plus 138, but Alex Bowman now and Chris Buescher, 1 more winner And oh goodness, I do think you could really see one more non-playoff driver win at this point now, whether it's a Ty Gibbs and AJ Allmendinger next week at Watkins Glen, or a complete lottery at Daytona to end the regular season. That being said, Bubba Wallace's win today definitely changes things and puts him now at the number 9 seed, even above Joe Logano, Chase Elliott, Ross Chastain, Josh. I mean, it changes things as far as the seeding. And for Bubba Wallace, just a huge peace of mind as well. But a lot of drivers still in must-win territory, with only a few drivers feeling even somewhat safe now heading to Iowa next week. But a lot still to be determined in the NASCAR playoff grid moving forward. But let me know your thoughts down below about today's Indianapolis race. Of course, my thoughts on the attendance and just NASCAR being at the track. It feels right with them being there. But Bubba Wallace, a great feel-good win today, of course. If you like what you saw, make sure to like this video. It does help me out a ton. Subscribe to Breaking Bob for more NASCAR content. Again, it really does help me out a ton if you've made it this far. I do appreciate you for watching. We've got Iowa next week. I know the repaves kind of messed that track up a little bit, but NASCAR is at least going to promote it, even if IndyCar didn't last week. But we'll see what happens from that track. The Blaney's, I'm sure, will be out in attendance. Ryan Blaney, the winner last year, he could definitely use some momentum on his side. We'll see what happens. I'll be here for all the NASCAR coverage throughout the week leading up to it. Stay tuned for more. I'll see you next time, though. Thanks for watching.